Flashback to April of 2020, whenever we saw the state's unemployment figures skyrocket. I've never seen unemployment figures like that coming from the state of Illinois. It was upwards of 200,000 in 1 week filing for unemployment insurance. And that was all because of Governor J.B. Pritzker's stay-at-home orders telling mom and pop shops they couldn't have in-person service, so those mom and pop shops couldn't make the money to pay the people that they were employing, and those people went on unemployment. But it wasn't just legitimate people going on unemployment. There was also incredible amounts of fraud. We heard of Congress people getting fraudulent cards with unemployment checks in them. We've heard of people with their identities being stolen, going through the unemployment insurance process. We heard of the incredible delays that there were when the state's unemployment office was not taking calls. People were calling and getting put on hold for hours on end. People would call and they'd get hung up on all of a sudden. People couldn't get through. They couldn't go in person because, well, there was a stay-at-home order, and the Department of Employment Security apparently wasn't essential enough to go into the office and actually deal with people who were applying for unemployment insurance. So we saw the absolute skyrocket of the unemployment insurance trust fund debt. State of Illinois actually had to go out and borrow $4.5 billion to level out the state's unemployment insurance fund. Well, several months ago, state lawmakers used tax dollars from the federal COVID-19 relief package to pay down some of the $4.5 billion debt, but they only used $2.7 billion, despite getting $8 billion from the federal government. So we paid down $2.7 billion. That brought it to about $1.8 billion that was of debt. Yesterday, Governor J.B. Pritzker made an announcement that indeed they're moving to pay down even more of this debt. Here is the governor yesterday just briefly talking about the numbers and what exactly this means.
5%. What's the dollar amount?
So it was at $1.812 billion. It's now down to 1.3, paid down by $450 million. And frankly, as the economy continues stabilized, we believe that we'll be able to reduce that even more. And the agreed bill process, working with the legislature, will be able to pay it off by year end.
Now, the governor was not asked about fraud yesterday, something we'll touch on here in a moment, but I reached out to State Representative Dan Ugasti, and he provided some initial reaction to this. And in particular, his first blush is he likes the idea of paying down debt, but he doesn't like where this money is coming from. Here is Dan Ugasti.
So my reaction is if we're paying down debt and saving interest for the taxpayers, that's a good thing. But where the money is coming from, I believe it's the wrong source, and it's not saving the taxpayers enough money. The Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund, this is unemployment taxes that businesses in Illinois have already paid into the fund. It's not ARPA money, and it's not the excess money we had from the end of the last fiscal year.
So Ugasti's been saying that they need to use the remaining ARPA dollars to pay down the debt instead of dipping into the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund that's generated from business owner and employer taxes. And he said that to try to hinge future payments off of that fund, that's not really that smart of an idea, because he says that there's a possible recession coming that could mean no or slow job growth. Here's Dan Ugasti.
Which means that the money they're using, which should be there in a reserve then, is not going to be there to use in the event of a recession.
And then we're talking fraud. How much fraud has there been in the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund? The governor was not asked about that. I asked the governor's office for a statement. They didn't respond, but we know $1.8 billion in federal funds come out of Illinois in fraud. How much state funds come out in fraud, we don't know. Here again is Dan Ugasti talking about that.
They still will not address the fraud issue with us. We need to know exactly how much fraud occurred from our own fund. We know we have an idea of the federal amount from the Auditor General's report on how much federal money went out, but we have no idea how much of our own money went out in fraud.
WMAY FM.